gym was packed as usual. Sweat-filled air, the constant hum of machines, and the rhythmic clink of weights. But for Jasmine, it was her safe space, her sanctuary. She walked out of the building, earbuds in, her routine complete. Her breath was heavy, her mind still on her workout. But as she rounded the corner, the world shifted. A police car pulled up fast. The tires screeched. The door slammed shut. Before she knew it, a cop was walking toward her. His eyes locked onto hers with a cold intensity that made her stomach churn. He didn't say anything at first, just stopped in front of her, blocking her path. His uniform was crisp, his stance rigid. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his tone firm, almost rehearsed. Jasmine stopped in her tracks. She didn't recognize him. The tension in the air was palpable, like something bad was coming. "You need to step over here for a second." Jasmine felt a jolt of unease. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, trying to stay calm, but her voice was edged with suspicion. "Just need to ask a few questions. You were seen acting suspicious, just want to make sure everything's fine," he said, his eyes flicking up and down her frame. Suspicious? She had just finished a workout, wearing nothing more than a simple tank top and gym shorts. She knew the drill. Officers had stopped her in the past, but something about the way he was looking at her made her uncomfortable. There was no reason for this. "I'm just trying to get home," Jasmine replied, her voice steady but tight. She had her keys in hand, ready to walk away. This was getting out of hand. The cop stepped closer, blocking her from continuing. "I'm not asking for your permission," he said, his tone hardening. "I need to check your ID, now." Jasmine's heart raced. She could feel her body reacting, a fight-or-flight instinct kicking in. She had been in situations like this before, when being black made her a target, where every move was scrutinized, where she had to be twice as careful, twice as calm. But this was different. The officer wasn't just doing his job. His eyes told a different story. She hesitated for a moment. This wasn't the first time she'd dealt with cops, but something about this cop felt off. His presence was too strong, his body language too aggressive. She wasn't used to this level of hostility. "I'm sorry, officer," she said, keeping her voice controlled, trying to suppress the anxiety bubbling up. "But I don't think I did anything wrong. I have a right to go home." "Not until I check your ID," he snapped. Jasmine could feel her chest tighten. She stood still for a second, considering her options. There was no way she was backing down. She had every right to ask him why he was detaining her, but she also knew it was a delicate balance. One wrong move, and things could escalate quickly. She tried again. "Why am I being detained?" she asked, her voice firm now, the edge of disbelief creeping in. "Just step aside and give me your ID," he repeated. Her pulse was hammering now, but she knew that engaging in a power struggle with him could turn dangerous. The cop's eyes darted to her phone, which was still in her hand. She could feel his gaze linger on it, and a thought hit her like a lightning bolt. He was trying to provoke a reaction. She had to keep her composure. But how much longer could she stand there? The cop's hand hovered near his belt, close to his taser, and the sight made Jasmine's blood run cold. She needed a plan, and fast. She was too close to the edge. She could feel the heat of her breath against the chill in the air. She had to act. "I'm not giving you my ID until you tell me why you're stopping me," she said, voice unwavering. His expression shifted slightly. His lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't move to arrest her. Yet, his fingers twitched, his eyes narrowed, as though he had expected her to back down, to be compliant. But Jasmine wasn't going to be the easy target this time. "You're making this more difficult than it needs to be," he said through clenched teeth. Suddenly, a voice interrupted. "Officer, what's going on here?" A man stepped out of a nearby building, his face twisted in confusion. His eyes flicked from the officer to Jasmine, trying to make sense of the situation. The cop's gaze shifted to the stranger, and for a split second, Jasmine saw the officer hesitate. "Nothing to worry about, sir," the cop said, his voice now laced with annoyance. But Jasmine saw something flicker in his eyes, fear. Maybe. Jasmine didn't trust him, not for a second. Something was off, and he didn't know the half of it. The secret she was hiding was about to come crashing into everything. Jasmine could feel the cop's eyes on her like a weight, his gaze never leaving her for a second. The stranger stood awkwardly to the side, still looking between them, unsure of what was happening. The cop's posture had softened, but only slightly. The threat was still there, simmering beneath the surface. Jasmine's heart pounded in her chest. She knew exactly what was going on. This wasn't just about a stop and frisk. It was personal. He wanted something, and it wasn't just her ID. "Is there a reason you're still holding me here?" Jasmine asked again, her voice low but demanding. Her eyes never left his. The officer's lips tightened. He glanced at the man who had intervened. and then back at her, and for the first time, a flicker of hesitation passed through his cold gaze. He wasn't used to being challenged. That much was clear. "I said I need to check your ID," he repeated. His voice strained now, more controlled but still edged with irritation. The power he expected to have over her was slipping away, and Jasmine wasn't about to let it slide back into his hands. But Jasmine wasn't stupid. She knew how to read a situation. The officer's earlier aggression wasn't just a coincidence. She was certain this wasn't the first time he had tried to intimidate someone like this, especially a woman of color walking down the street at night after a gym session, looking out of place in his eyes. He had prejudged her, assumed the worst before she even opened her mouth. The man who had stepped forward now seemed to sense that the situation was escalating. "Are you sure everything is all right here, officer? Maybe we can just clear this up quickly," he said, stepping closer to Jasmine, his voice gentle but firm. The cop's eyes flicked to the stranger, his jaw tightening. "Mind your own business," he snapped, his voice sharp now, showing a clear hint of hostility. But the stranger, undeterred, held his ground, staring back at the officer. Jasmine didn't miss the way the cop's gaze shifted from her to the stranger. He was losing control. A part of her wanted to smile. She'd been in enough situations to know that sometimes you just had to stand firm and let the world around you unfold. But there was no time for a victory lap. She had to keep moving. Suddenly, she saw the cop's hand inching toward his belt again, a move that didn't go unnoticed. Her body stiffened, adrenaline flooding her veins. The man who had stepped in saw it too, and his voice cut through the tension. Hey, is this really necessary?" His hands were raised slightly, a sign of peace, but his stance was one of warning. The officer's hand stopped in midair, his fingers curled slightly, his eyes flicking over to the stranger again, then to Jasmine. The two of them stood locked in a silent battle of wills. "All right, enough. This is my last warning," the cop said, his voice low and dangerous. His hand still hovered, not far from his taser. But Jasmine didn't flinch. She wasn't going to back down. Not now. "I'm not going anywhere until you give me a reason why you're stopping me," Jasmine stated firmly, her voice steady, her hands by her sides, ready for whatever came next. The cop seemed to weigh her words. Then finally, with a slow, deliberate motion, his hand retreated. "Fine," he said through clenched teeth, his face flushed with frustration. "You're free to go." Jasmine didn't move immediately. She couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She could see the cop's face red with barely controlled anger, his eyes burning with resentment, as if he had lost some kind of game. But Jasmine wasn't concerned about his bruised ego. She was more concerned with why he had stopped her in the first place. "Thank you," she said coldly, the words leaving her mouth like ice. The cop stepped back, his eyes still on her, as if he didn't want her to leave just yet. Jasmine didn't care about his lingering stare. She turned her back to him and began to walk away, but as she did, she heard his voice one more time. "Next time you might want to watch where you're walking," he spat, his tone thick with disgust. Her jaw clenched. She refused to let him get under her skin. Her walk was steady as she continued down the sidewalk, but her mind raced. What just happened? She couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. It wasn't about the ID. It never was. He hadn't been trying to find out who she was. He had been sizing her up, looking for an opening. And as she turned the corner, a sinking feeling settled in her gut. There was no way the cop would just let her go after a standoff like that. There was more to this. She could feel it. Jasmine reached her car and stopped for a moment, pressing her hand against the door for support. Her mind raced again, replaying the encounter in flashes, and then it hit her. She hadn't noticed it before. He had been watching her every move closely, but not because she was acting suspicious. He had been looking for something. He had been waiting for something. She had no idea what it was, but she had a sense that this wasn't over, and she had to get to the bottom of it before it came for her again. With one last glance at the officer's patrol car still parked a block away, Jasmine got into her car and locked the door. She had no idea what kind of storm was coming her way, but she knew one thing for sure: the cop had no idea who he was dealing with. Jasmine's hands gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. The engine hummed quietly beneath her, but her thoughts were loud and chaotic. As she drove, the weight of what had just happened settled deeper. She wasn't one to get rattled, but something about that officer's eyes, something about the way he had sized her up, gnawed at her. She wasn't going to let this go. She needed answers. She had seen the way the cop's demeanor had shifted when the stranger intervened. The man had been the perfect distraction, and in that brief moment, the officer had been caught off guard. But she couldn't let that be the end of it. No, it was too strange, too deliberate. The cop hadn't been concerned with her ID or any standard procedure. She knew he had been looking for something, But what? She needed to make sure she was ready for whatever came next. Her mind flashed back to her gym bag, still sitting in the back seat. She had been too preoccupied during her workout to even think about it. But now, it seemed like a good time to check. She parked her car at the corner store and stepped out. The cool evening air hit her face as she opened the trunk and grabbed the bag. She needed to go through it, make sure there was nothing that could have triggered the officer's bizarre behavior. When she pulled the bag open, her eyes immediately landed on the small, nondescript envelope tucked inside her workout clothes. It was odd. It wasn't something she would normally carry. Curiosity overtook her, and she slipped the envelope out. There was no name, no address, just a cryptic handwritten message on the front. For your eyes only. She hesitated. Something about it felt off. But then again, everything about today had felt off. Taking a deep breath, she opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded carefully. She unfolded it, and her eyes immediately locked onto the words, "They know. They're watching. Don't trust anyone." Her heart skipped a beat. Who was they? What the hell was going on? Suddenly, a sharp honk from behind her made her jump. She turned to see a car parked right behind hers, close enough that she hadn't noticed it when she pulled in. Her body tensed as she quickly shoved the envelope back into the bag, trying to calm the racing pulse in her neck. Was this another cop? Was this part of the trap? Her instincts kicked in as she slammed the trunk closed and turned to face the car. The man inside rolled down the window, revealing a face she didn't recognize. The stranger was older, dressed casually in a black jacket, but his presence felt almost too calculated. "You need to be careful," he said with a quiet urgency in his voice. Jasmine froze. "Excuse me." The man glanced over his shoulder quickly before speaking again. "The cop who stopped you earlier, he's not who you think he is. He's been following you for a while. You need to trust me. We don't have much time." Her mind raced. This was too much, way too much. "Who are you?" she demanded, but her voice was softer now, almost in disbelief. Was this some kind of joke? "I know it's hard to believe," he said, looking both ways again as if making sure no one else was watching. "I can't explain everything right now, but you need to get out of here. He's waiting for you to make a mistake." Jasmine felt a chill crawl up her spine. She stepped back instinctively, her hands tightening on her bag. She had no idea who this man was or why he was warning her, but there was something about his calm demeanor that suggested he knew something she didn't, and that thought alone scared her more than anything else. "How do you know about that cop?" she asked, her voice now trembling slightly, though she tried her best to stay composed. The man's eyes were sharp, focused. "I can't say much more right now, but trust me when I tell you, you're being set up, and it's bigger than you think." Before she could respond, he threw a quick glance over his shoulder again and then back at her. "Just remember, I'm the one who tried to help you. You'll see me again, but don't do anything stupid." He slammed the car into gear and drove off before she could even process his words. Jasmine stood there, staring at the empty spot where his car had been, her mind reeling. Set up? Watched? What the hell was going on? With her heart pounding, she glanced around, paranoia setting in. The store she had parked outside of was quiet, no one in sight, but Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. She needed to get out of here, but she also needed to figure out what was really going on. Was this connected to the officer? And what did that cryptic note in her bag mean? Jasmine climbed back into her car and started the engine. She had to think fast. One thing was certain, she wasn't going to wait around for this situation to get worse, and she was definitely going to find out everything about that cop. Jasmine drove aimlessly for what felt like hours, but in reality, it was only minutes. The man's words echoed in her mind, louder than the sound of her car's engine. "You're being set up." The city lights blurred past her, and the anxiety gnawed at her insides. She had to stop thinking about it. But every time she tried, her mind snapped back to the envelope in her bag. Who had written that message? Why was she being watched? Her hand instinctively reached for her phone, but she stopped herself. The last thing she needed was to start looking up things online and risk someone tracking her. She had no idea who was after her, but she couldn't risk making a mistake. She pulled into a secluded parking lot, far from the busy streets. The car idled as she sat there in the dark, staring at the dashboard. Every small sound seemed magnified in the silence. Her eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that cop's cruiser pulling up behind her, but no one was there. She exhaled, tension still gripping her shoulders. It was time to think things through logically. The officer's behavior had been strange from the start. Jasmine wasn't naive. She knew exactly what racism looked like. She had experienced it her whole life. But something about this cop, it wasn't just about race. It was deeper, His actions, his hesitation, his obvious annoyance when the stranger interrupted, that wasn't the typical response she'd seen from biased officers. No, this felt personal. It felt calculated. He wasn't trying to pull her over for a routine check. He was looking for something specific. But what? Jasmine gripped the steering wheel tighter. She couldn't do this alone. She needed help. But who could she trust? The man who had warned her in the parking lot had seemed genuine, but what if he was part of the setup too? The truth was, Jasmine had no one she could count on to help her in a situation like this. Her mind flashed to her old friend Darnell. They hadn't spoken in months, but he was the one person who knew everything about her past. He'd helped her out of tight situations before. He could handle things she couldn't, and more importantly, he knew how to cover his tracks. The only problem? Darnell had connections, dangerous ones, and those connections could be just as much of a liability as an asset. Jasmine's fingers hesitated over her phone. She didn't know what to do. The last thing she wanted was to drag him into this, but she didn't have a choice. She typed his name into the search bar, and just as she was about to hit send, her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "I know what you're thinking. You don't trust anyone right now, but you should. You need to meet, now." Her heart skipped a beat. The message was short, direct, and unsettling. There was no signature, no name, just the chilling promise of more information. She wasn't sure who had sent it, but she couldn't ignore the urgency behind the words. It was as if they knew what was going on inside her head. She glanced around the empty parking lot, trying to shake off the sense of impending doom. It could be a trap, but she also knew that it could be the lead she had been looking for. Jasmine made up her mind. She would follow the message. There was no going back now. She typed a quick response. "Where?" The reply came almost immediately. "Meet me at the old diner on Elm Street. Come alone." Jasmine frowned at the text, her thoughts racing. The diner was an old spot, barely a place most people remembered, let alone visited. It wasn't far, but it was in a part of town she usually avoided. It had been abandoned for years, just one of those places that people didn't think twice about. Why there? It didn't make sense, but then again, nothing in her life made sense at the moment. She glanced in the rearview mirror once again, her pulse quickening. She couldn't explain it, but the feeling of being watched crept back over her. Her grip tightened on the wheel. It wasn't just paranoia this time. Something had shifted. Someone or something was in control of this situation, and it wasn't her. With a deep breath, she started the car. Her instincts screamed at her to turn back, to find a safer path, but she couldn't. She needed to know the truth. Jasmine drove through the quiet streets, the city lights casting long shadows on the pavement. Her eyes darted between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. Each passing car felt like a threat, but nothing happened. No one followed her. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, was keeping an eye on her. She pulled into the parking lot of the old diner, the building now dark and abandoned, just as she remembered it. A thick fog hung in the air, adding to the eeriness of the place. Jasmine parked at the far end of the lot, her headlights cutting through the mist. She stepped out of the car, every step heavier than the last. The building loomed ahead, its windows empty, its doors long locked. But she could feel eyes on her, eyes that weren't her own. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up as she approached the diner's entrance. It was too quiet. Jasmine hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open. The hinges creaked in protest, the sound echoing through the empty building. She stepped inside. The diner was colder than she remembered. The smell of mildew lingered in the air, and the flickering light above her cast eerie shadows on the cracked vinyl booths. The silence was deafening, the kind of silence that made you feel like you were intruding on something you weren't meant to see. But Jasmine didn't have time for hesitation. She had come too far to back out now. Her boots clicked softly on the worn linoleum floor as she walked deeper into the diner, her eyes scanning every corner. There was no sign of anyone. The tables were empty, save for a few crumbs from some long-forgotten meal. The bar stools at the counter were tilted, abandoned. It was a ghost town, a place frozen in time. Where are they? Jasmine thought, her nerves starting to fray. She pulled out her phone, checking the time. The message had said now, but there was no one in sight. She took another step, her hand instinctively reaching for the waistband of her pants, where she'd tucked her pepper spray. She wasn't stupid. She knew this could be a trap. Whoever was behind this was trying to get her alone. She wasn't going to make it easy for them. Suddenly, a sound broke the stillness, a chair scraping against the floor. It came from behind the counter. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat. She didn't turn around, but she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. She was being watched. No doubt about it. Jasmine. The voice came from the shadows. It was low, calm, but there was something in it that made her blood run cold. She didn't recognize it, but it was familiar in a way that made her pulse spike. The man emerged from behind the counter, his face partially hidden in the darkness. "You came," he said, his voice tinged with amusement. "I wasn't sure you would." "Who are you?" Jasmine demanded, trying to sound braver than she felt. Her hand was still on her pepper spray, and her stance was wide, ready to defend herself if needed. "What do you want?" The man stepped forward into the dim light, his face now visible. He was tall, with dark hair and sharp features. His eyes were calculating, assessing her. "I'm the one who sent you the message," he said, not bothering with introductions. "And I think it's time you understood what's really going on." Jasmine's mind raced. "What's going on?" she asked, barely able to keep the tremor out of her voice. She had no idea who this person was, but something about him felt wrong. "The cop who stopped you earlier," he began, his eyes never leaving hers. "He's not just some random officer. He's been tracking you for a while now, and he's not the only one. There are more people who are watching you." Jasmine's stomach dropped. She felt a surge of panic. "What do you mean tracking me? Why me?" The man took a step closer, his voice growing softer, more intense. "Because you're involved in something bigger than you realize. You've been handed a piece of the puzzle, and whether you know it or not, they think you're the key." Jasmine's mind spun. The key? To what? What puzzle was he talking about? The man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a knowing smile, like he knew something she didn't, and he was enjoying it. "You don't understand yet," he said, shaking his head. "But you will. In time you'll see that this wasn't just some random encounter with a racist cop. This is much bigger, much more dangerous." Jasmine felt the weight of his words settle in, a cold dread creeping up her spine. She stepped back, her heart pounding in her chest. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He took another step toward her, and her hand instinctively tightened around the pepper spray. But he didn't flinch. "I don't want anything from you," he said. "I'm here to warn you, to give you a choice. You can either keep running, keep pretending that you don't know what's happening, or you can help us stop it." Jasmine felt the tension in her shoulders. Help them? Who was them? What was she even being asked to do? "I don't know who you are," she said, her voice firm now, more in control. "I don't know what any of this means, but I'm done playing games. So if you've got something to say, say it. Otherwise, I'm leaving." The man tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. Then, he leaned in just a little closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You don't get it, do you? You're already in this. You've already been chosen. The cop, the note in your bag, the people watching you. It's all connected. You can't escape it." Jasmine took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had no idea who this man was, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't walk away from this, not without answers. She couldn't leave until she understood what was happening. But what did he mean? Chosen? "Tell me what this is about," she demanded, stepping closer, her fear now mixed with frustration. "Who are you? And what do you want from me?" The man looked at her for a long, heavy moment. Then he smiled again. This time there was no humor in it, just cold, hard certainty. "You'll find out soon enough, Jasmine," he said, his voice colder now. "Soon enough you'll know exactly what this is all about." As he spoke those words, a noise from outside the diner caught both their attention. A car pulling up fast, tires screeching. The man's eyes widened slightly, and he turned his head toward the door. "Get out," he said sharply. "Now. You don't have much time." Before Jasmine could respond, the door swung open, and the harsh light from outside illuminated the diner. She didn't wait to ask questions. She turned and ran. The chase was on.